Hey everyone, my name is Kelsey Miller. This is the second episode of the Writing Diaries, and today we're going to talk about the prologue. You probably come across a lot of prologues when you're reading, right? But did you ever stop and wonder if they should be there at all? A lot of authors include prologues when they're writing for the first time, but sometimes this can actually be a problem because they don't know how to write them correctly. A trap that authors tend to fall into when they begin writing is that when they write the prologue, they tend to use it as a vehicle for backstory. Backstory is the part of the story that sets up the setting and everything that occurred before the events of the actual novel. Now, it's certainly okay to have backstory in your novels. In fact, you have to. But a lot of new authors tend to put so much in there that the story never really gets off the ground, and it's actually really boring for people to read. A lot of inexperienced authors think that their story needs a lot of backstory in order to make sense, which isn't actually the case. As you can imagine, the place they usually think that this backstory fits in the best is in the prologue. That's why a lot of editors generally don't like new authors to put prologues into their stories, because 9 times out of 10, you can just cut it out anyway. So if that's the case, why do you see prologues? A lot of times the prologue is written in a story by an already established author who knows the ins and outs of what you should include in prologues. When I started writing my first book, I knew that I wanted to have a prologue, but I knew that if I wasn't careful, I would fall into this backstory trap. So I had to come up with something that would set the tone for the novel without actually putting all of this backstory in, which admittedly would be boring. I came up with writing my prologue as a poem. And when I mean a poem, I mean like an epic, you know, those really insane ones like Beowulf that go on and on for pages and they tell a story. Now granted, my prologue did not go on for pages and pages. I don't think I'd be able to write something like that. But it was enough of a story to get the point across of what life is like in my novel without going on for paragraphs and paragraphs of backstory. Basically, what you should be taking away from this video is that if you're going to include a prologue in your story, and in the first chapters of your story additionally, really try to cut back on the exposition. You don't want a lot of, explanation of how characters got to where they are, what their reasoning is, everything. You really want to jump right into the inciting incident, which is, that event that causes the characters to go into the story that you're writing. If you want to include a prologue in your story, that's certainly okay. I would suggest if you're going to write something like a mystery novel, you'll have some character being mysteriously murdered in the prologue. Or if you're writing a dystopian novel, you could talk about how the world suddenly ends in the prologue. Either way, it gets some idea of what the story's about, but it has enough of a draw to the reader that they'll want to read more. And that, more than anything, is what you want the prologue to be about.